Greensboro. This is Pastor Kimon Freeman, Angry Black Man in Therapy, representing We Act Real on the radical side of Martin King Avenue, the Unabella Nation's capital, live in the studio. And I am going to be joined, as you can see in the title, here shortly by Dr. Amber Hewitt, who is the Chief Equity Officer and Director of Office of Racial Equity. If you have not heard about the Mayor's Racial Equity Action Plan, you have until January 31st of this month, the end of this month, to have your 2 cents added into it. We're just waiting for Dr. Hewitt to join us. And if you could bear with us so we can populate this stream and give her a second. As soon as she comes on, let's see if we can bring her here. Boom. So in the meantime, let me share this with you. This is the mayor's words. We must be intentional about ending structural racism and reversing the legacies of policies that intentionally locked people out of opportunity. That is what the Racial Equity Action Plan will help us do. That is our Mayor Muriel Bowser. Now, some people think our mayor is a polarizing figure. You're either for or against her or what have you. That has nothing whatsoever to do with this. Your personal feelings on top of the mayor has no bearing on whether or not you have input to bring to the table for a racial equity action plan that's here to address the disparities in the nation's capital, a city where we have billions of dollars in surplus, and they actually asking you what you think they should do with it to address inequities and disparities in the city. And some of you may be unaware of some of these inequities and disparities. Let me start here. The white unemployment rate in Washington, D.C. is 1 point something. The unemployment rate for black people in Washington, D.C. is 10 point something. The average white family in Washington, D.C. has a wealth on average 80 times the wealth of the average black family. I didn't say 81%. I said 81 multiples. That means for whatever you and yours can pull together, multiply that times 81, and that's what they got. So when you hear someone talk about, oh, well, this is just the market forces and this is the prices and it's just been expensive, they basically give you a brand new white only sign or color only sign. It's the modern day redlining, that amount of economic disparity. And let's not even get into the poverty aspect that, we have the higher poverty rate than the national average. That fund fuels violence and crime. So there's a lot that could be said to address the inequities in this city. The fact that we have a black woman as mayor, but at the same time, this is the most dangerous city in all of America for a black woman of any social economic background to give birth doesn't make any sense. So these are inequities that are costing lives. So let's get real, and as we say here, We Act Real, let's do something. And this is your opportunity to do something. You have until January 31st to add your 2 cents on what you think the Washington, D.C. should be doing with billions, with an S, in surplus and funds to address some of these disparities, inequities, and gross inequities. And don't feel like you got to have some brilliant proposal, just what you believe, just what you think. Alice Walker says the greatest power is convincing people they don't have any. Okay? And let my life be an example to you. We built We Act Radio. Some people, how you feel about it, it's here, and it's been here for 11 years. It's a brick and mortar studio. The building is paid for, and we still clocking. So, do what you can with what you have, and your voices will be heard. We're here to amplify those voices. And as soon as I see Dr. Hewitt, let me make sure they know that we're not on Kimon Freeman's page. We're on We Act Radio page. So give me a second here, guys. All right, so I'm waiting for Dr. Hewitt from the Office of Racial Equity to join us this morning. If you do not have the link for the Racial Equity Action Plan, go back to my personal page, Kimon Freeman, Kymone, and it's pinned to the top or on We Act Radio Facebook page. I'm sorry I'm not able to post it in the comments because you can't click the link in these comments. That's a hindrance on IG. So bear with me here as we get Dr. Hewitt to join us. Okay, let's see. Please check out the schools in Ward 1 and 2 and check out the The war, yes, the disparity is wild and unacceptable. Who said that? I appreciate that. That's absolutely now. So one of the things that you should be putting into your 2 cents is having equitable funding for schools. There we go. I see wants to send me a message. Hold on, guys. There we go. All right. Let's get ready to bring them on here. Okay, and give them a second here, and we're gonna bring them on. And we was just talking about, because property taxes determine the funding for schools. So Malcolm X says that if you live in a poor neighborhood, you get a poor education. If you get a poor education, it enables you to get a poor paying job. You get a poor paying job, it enables you to live in a poor neighborhood, and that cycle repeats itself. So property taxes is the direct criteria of funding for that school. It ensures that that area stays in that vicious cycle, and we're trying to break that. So the same funding that's afforded to kids at Sidwell Friends should be afforded to kids in Ward 8. I mean, let's be real. If we're going to talk about disparities, okay? Waiting for them to join. I see they're here. I see y'all watching. You should have seen a prompt for you to join. You should have seen a prompt for you to join. Let's see if that. Let's try it again. You should see an invite to join. You should see an invite to join. There we go. Boom shakalaka.
Hello, good morning.
Hello, Dr. Amber Hewitt.
Hi. Thank you for
Happy
having
New Year to you.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for joining us here on the radical side of Martin Luther King Avenue. And since we are on the radical side of Martin Luther King Avenue, let's bring Martin Luther King into the room. A lot of people are familiar with Martin Luther King's last speech, but they're not as familiar with his next to his last speech that was actually delivered right here in Washington, D.C., March 31st, 1968. It was entitled Remaining Awake During a Great Revolution. This is what he had to say. This is America's opportunity to help bridge the gulf between the haves and the have-nots. The question is whether America will do it. There is nothing new about poverty. What is new is that we now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty. The real question is whether we have the will. And you, ma'am, are charged with welcoming the voice of the community into this racial equity action plan. Let's start there. What is the plan? Where are we with the plan? And what can we do to support the plan? Because we know that the public comments is closing at the end of the month on January 31st. Welcome to We Act Radio.
Thank you. Well, first, thank you and thank We Act Radio for having me. I'm excited to be here this morning to inform DC residents about Mayor Bowser's Racial Equity Action Plan. I know that you were part of our process of receiving input that informed the draft plan over the summer. You've attended several of our engagement forums. So I just want to thank you for having me and being able to use your platform to share Mayor Bowser's commitment for advancing racial equity in the district. And like you said from Dr. MLK, I know we're on the heels of celebrating his life and his legacy. You mentioned around haves and have-nots, and that is an example of what we mean by disparities and closing equity gaps, and that's what this plan hopes to address. It's also important to note that where we are, the inequities and the disparities that we see, it didn't happen overnight. So Mayor Bowser, as well as her Office of Racial Equity, we're in this for the long haul. And part of advancing racial equity is acknowledging past harms that got us here, past harms like structural racism that still sort of affects where we are today. So I wanted to highlight that point that this plan sets the foundation for a formalized process. So equity and racial equity isn't new for the Bowser administration, but a formalized accountability structure that this plan provides is a step forward. And we want all residents, particularly our young people, to respond to the plan because this plan directly impacts our lives as district residents. So the plan is a commitment by DC government, proposed actions that we will take to address gaps and disparities in a comprehensive way. So if you look at the plan, you see that we hope to address several priorities of the mayor, including housing. You know, she had launched a very profound initiative, the Black Homeownership Strike Force, looking at housing, public safety, education, economic opportunity, as well as neighborhood and civic life. So you'll see ways that we plan to address all of those areas. And the plan has 4 overarching goals. Again, this is a process as well as an outcome. So we want to see a more racially equitable DC, and Mayor Bowser has said that several times and is committed to that effort. So the 4 main goals in the plan, its first is around educating and providing district government staff tools to apply a racial equity lens to their work. And what we mean by that is making sure that our policies, our programs, and our budgets are working for everyone, and that we're removing any barriers for access to services so that everyone can thrive and reach their full potential. The second major goal of the plan is around what are the specific ways that we're going to measure our progress. How are we going to know if we move the needle on any of these gaps that we face, such as the racial wealth gap, maternal health gap. And then the third part is how can district government strengthen our partnerships in community and more meaningfully engage residents, because we know that racial equity is about sort of closing those gaps, but it's also making sure that we are bringing into the conversation the lived experiences of those who are most impacted by our policies. And then lastly, how can district government further our efforts to make sure that we have an inclusive and equitable work environment? So those are our 4 major goals, and we invite the public and DC residents to take a look at what we have proposed, and we hope to continue to receive comments on the plan. And like you noted, it'll be open for public comment until January 31st.
So again, we're joined by Dr. Amber Hewitt, the Chief Equity Officer and Director of the Office of Racial Equity here today. The district's first Racial Equity Action Plan maps out steps the DC government will take over the next 3 years to reduce racial and ethnic inequities and improve life for all Washingtonians. To view a full draft of the Racial Equity Action Plan, you can visit the Office of Racial Equity's website. That is ore.dc.gov/action plan. Again, that's ore.dc.gov/action plan. Or you can simply go to my personal IG page. It's pinned to the top. We Act Radio's Facebook page is pinned to the top, and that direct link will take you there. What would you say to people who will be hesitant to provide their input, that this may be something above their heads, or not part of their wheelhouse, and they may be intimidated, or they're not going to listen to me anyway? What would you say to those people?
Well, we encourage everyone to comment, and we know that the term racial equity sometimes can seem abstract, but what it really means is how can we make our city, our services, our policies work for everyone? So as a district resident, if you could imagine a more racially equitable DC, or a DC that can help further meet your needs or further meet the needs of your loved ones, you can think about it in that way. And we invite you to make comments. If you aren't able to read the full plan, that's not the expectation. But if you have ideas on any barriers that you face as a district resident, or what you've observed in your community, we're happy to hear those comments. So we invite you to read the plan and comment, or we invite you any ideas around what services, what policies, what initiatives would help you as a DC resident thrive to your fullest ability.
So the plan that we are looking at now, because we can read this plan, is a 42-page document thus far. That's the what is. The comments is what it possibly should be. So now that you have opened that door, what could you share the importance of having young people weigh in on this plan, and what advice would you give them about submitting their comments, if this is an opportunity to amplify the young voices in the city as well?
Yes, I'm really glad you asked that question, because young people, they are our future leaders, and this plan lays the foundation for their future. So their perspective, their voice, their ideas are critical We really invite young people to sort of share with us their vision for a city that they want to live in and continue to live in. We have the opportunity to speak to several young people during one of our summer engagement forums, and that was one of the most powerful sessions. So again, we want this plan to reflect the experiences, the values of DC residents, and that can't happen unless we hear from you. So we really invite our young people, and Kimon, to borrow another MLK quote. One of my favorites is that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And our young people have been doing that. We want that to continue for them to do that. And then commenting on that plan will help us bend that moral arc of the universe towards justice.
Before you joined us this morning, we had a few comments, and one I wanted to share with you was there was a comment from ASAP Baba, who said that please check out the schools in Ward 1 and 2 and check out the Ward 8 schools. The disparity is wild and unacceptable. And I made note that, you know, property tax traditionally has been the metric used to fund these schools. And if you live in a poor neighborhood, then obviously you're going to have a poor funded school. And you live in a wealthy neighborhood, you're going to have a wealthy funded school. And that it reinforces the disparities. And we know historically in Washington, D.C., anything west of the river looks one way, and everything east of the river looks another way. And, of course, with the gentrification of the city, that shrinkage has created pockets of restricted to east of the river itself. Having said that, how do we begin to apply some of the policies, or if you would like to share what policies could address those specific issues in bridging between what is and what should be?
Well, thank you for that question. I forgot, I didn't catch the name of the person who
I believe it's they're going by ASAP Baba. So thank you to ASAP Baba for following We Act Radio.
Yes, thank you, ASAP Baba. And we invite you to submit additional comments beyond that. And education and educational equity is a core component of that plan. We have worked with Mayor Bowser as well as the Deputy Mayor's office on education to address educational equity, to make sure that there is no difference in the educational outcomes between Ward 1 and let's say Wards 7 and 8. So if you take a look at the indicators or ways that we plan to measure that, if there's another way that you propose that we measure or address when it comes to closing those education gaps, we're happy to do that. So I really thank you for that comment. And also, we know that educational outcomes aren't just informed by what happens in the classroom. It's also informed, we have to take a holistic look at this. So I also want to mention that this is a comprehensive and a holistic plan. So if you see, say, how we're planning to address public safety and justice or education or health, also know that all of these things are related to one another. We don't just live in silos. We all are engaged. If, say, we have a loved one, or if we are in school ourselves, we're engaged in the school system. We're all impacted by public safety and justice. So it's important that we look at, say, how health disparities and economic disparities and inequities address education as well. And we know that Mayor Bowser is committed to that. So again, thank you for that. And we invite you to submit additional comments on that topic as well.
Yeah. For those who are unaware, could you give us an idea on how the Office of Racial Equity came to be? What was the roots and the genesis of your organization, and how you came to be its fearless director?
Well, thank you for that. And again, I have to thank Mayor Bowser for her vision for establishing this office and appointing me to this position. I must say that this is quite an honor to see through her vision for a more racially equitable DC and continue to listen to the voices of residents so that we can make real change that directly impacts people's lives. So the mayor established this office in February of 2021. I was appointed in April of 2021. We also carry forward a law that was passed by council in December of 2020. Councilmember Kenyon McDuffie was the lead sponsor on that bill. So we also carry for many of the provisions within that law, one of them being to develop a district-wide racial equity action plan.
So, guys, you can go again. I think they pinned the, or I guess I should have pinned. Let me do that now. So now pinned to the top the website for the Racial Equity Action Plan. You shouldn't be intimidated at all by the action plan submission process, because it's, once you go up there, it's a very simple document. It's kind of like you're just filling it out. That's a maximum of what, 4,000 characters. How many words is that? That's 571 words. That's a short less than a brief essay. So within 500 words or less, can you tell the city what you would like to see happen? And I was hoping to get some more questions and comments, Dr. Hewitt here. We got quite a few people watching, but we don't have quite as many voices. Now, what do you think it would? Oh, by the way, how many comments and input have you seen thus far? This dropped in November. Has the response been this far?
So far, we've received about 100 comments and counting, and we invite more. So we are looking forward to reviewing those inputs. So about 100 comments thus far, but we welcome and come on, like you said, it can be less than 500 words as well. So we don't want you to be intimidated by the word count. And you can also email us as well.
You had a very well attended press conference. It was very lively. Thank you for having me as well. But I'm a little disappointed that we only have 100 comments. It should be hundreds of comments or thousands of comments, because this issue is something that everyone in the city should be concerned about, and everyone is affected about it. And for those people who are on the other side of the aisle, who feel that they are not on the receiving end of these disparities, what do you say to them on why they should be part of this process as well? I like to say that I think it's a part of public safety, but what do you say to people who feel that they're not on the receiving end of the disparities, and why they should also be part of this process?
That's an excellent question. I do want to address the comments before turning to that. In that 100 comments on the plan thus far, that doesn't count the number of residents that we engaged since the fall of 2021 through this year who informed the draft plan. So I wanted to mention that. And that is a. And I
don't want to minimize 100. 100 is 100. 100 people is 100 people.
Yeah.
So I don't want to minimize that. So let me backpedal on that. But please continue.
I know that wasn't your point, and we're here because we want more people to know about it and submit comments. And that is a question that I've heard before, and it's important to know that racial equity affects the lives of everyone. It's about closing gaps, but it's about improving outcomes for all people. So, for example, a common health inequity that we talk about, I can bring it here to DC, between 2014 in 2018, Black mothers represented about 50% of the births, but about 90% of pregnancy-related deaths. So that's an example of a health disparity or health inequity. So when we think about that, we need to make sure that we are investing, as Mayor Bowser has, in health equity initiatives that will close that gap. And those initiatives and those funding is going to benefit everyone. But I will say that racial equity is acknowledging that we know particularly Black and Brown residents are disproportionately impacted when it comes to these areas. So it's about closing equity gaps, but it's about improving outcomes for all people. We're all living in the city together.
Well, as you said, we all live in the city together, but there are people who live west of 16th Street who life expectancy is over 20 years higher than the life expectancy of those who live east of the river. So when we live in the same city, and that type of disparity, it's a matter of life and death that we participate in this process, and not only our 2 cents, but to make sure that we hold each other accountable, that to see this is implemented in some real level in our lifetime. So I know Your time is short, and this is We Act Radio. We do shout outs. So if you have any shout outs that you want to put out there, please do. But I wanted to make one last pitch to those people who are on the fence, who simply do not believe that their voice can make a difference. What is your message to them to hopefully become the next public comment? And is it a public comment or private comment? Because you got some people don't want to attach their names to something publicly, so that's a whole nother issue. So that's a two-pronged question. I hope I didn't confuse you, but if you could respond to that before we go.
Yes, and we will not be making public, tying individual comments to individuals or organizations, but you will see a summary of what we hear in the final plan, because you mentioned the word accountability before, and in some ways this is a measure of accountability, transparency, and a commitment, an ongoing example of an ongoing commitment from Mayor Bowser around racial equity. So if you are on the fence or unsure about sharing your voice, again, that is what this effort is all about. Mayor Bowser wants to hear your thoughts and ideas, because the only way that we can really address the problems and challenges is to hear from the people experiencing those problems and challenges, to make sure that we're coming up with the most effective solutions.
I know I said that was the last question, but bear with me. After the public comment closes on January 31st at the close of business, what is the next step in this plan, and what do we expect to see come out of this?
Well, the next step is for the racial equity team to review all of the comments. Again, we plan to have a summary of what we've heard in the final draft of the plan. So you can expect later this year the final plan after it's submitted to the mayor, and then subsequently council as well. And then we're ready to get to work. So this isn't a plan that's just going to live on a virtual shelf. This is a plan about action. So we plan to get right to work with implementing the proposed actions and ideas that we've heard from district residents.
Well, you heard it here at ore.dc.gov/action plan. This is We Act Radio. Our motto here is to do something. I want to thank my guest today, the Chief Equity Officer and Director of the Office of Racial Equity, Dr. Amber Hewitt. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And also thank you for, as you say, incorporating and inviting the voice of the community. Thank you for joining us here today. I wish you continued success and good health, and I look forward to seeing you in the future, all right?
Thank you, likewise.
All right, take care. This is Kamon Freeman signing off here at We Act Radio. Do something before January 31st, close of business. Peace.